Welcome back. Welcome back once again to the number one source for information, education, and inspiration on the most underrated career opportunity in business today, the You Should Get a License podcast. My name is Rod Powell, and I have the pleasure and honor today of speaking with a leader in this space, a true employee benefits champion, and someone who is also very passionate about women in leadership because she is a woman in leadership, a space where we definitely need to see more of that representation as well. This is exciting because I always get excited to speak to someone who is in that benefit space, because when people think about insurance, they usually don't think about employee benefits. But I want to welcome employee benefits consultant and leader, Miss Kassi O'Brien.
I like
I
it.
want my Irish twins on it.
I was like, put a little flair on the end, right?
Yeah. How you doing, Kassi?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me on. And we were just talking about how long it's been, and I don't know if you remember, but we met like post COVID at the
Yes.
Common House in
Yes.
an elevator, and you heard
Yes.
me talking about employee benefits, and you
Yes.
being who you are, you stopped me and was like, "Wait a minute, I'd like to talk to you."
Yeah. I'm like, hey, let's
Yeah.
connect. Because as the business is built on relationships, and I'm just glad that we've been able to kind of keep in contact on LinkedIn, and I see your posts, and I see the information that you share, and glad that we could get together on this platform to speak a little bit more about what you do, and kind of what your mission is and objectives. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. And I was excited to come on, number one, and just like pumped for you and what you're doing. And I see you all over LinkedIn too, and just the message you're spreading and the education you're giving to a community that maybe doesn't know about this line of work, I think is just so important. I have two children and two girls. And like, I think seeing somebody who looks like you that's doing it and succeeding, it means a lot. And I think we need to do more of that. So congrats to you and your audience, and, all the wonderful people you've had on before here. I've enjoyed listening to a lot of them.
Hey, thank you. So look, let's talk about it. I know you're in a good mood for this call because your Clemson Tigers had a good
They won.
right.
They pulled it out, man. It's this season has been tough, right? But without darkness, there's no light. So they pulled it out with Georgia Tech, and so yeah, it was a good weekend. Yeah.
We'll see what happens with North Carolina coming up.
There you go. I can't be too boisterous. I've had to calm down on that this year a little bit.
Hey, listen, we got to celebrate every victory,
That's right.
and speaking of victories, I know this is a busy time of year. So by the time everyone hears and sees this interview, you may be past the fourth quarter, past this heavy blitz of open enrollment period. But for this platform, we talk about the different market segments, the different lanes that people can explore as career paths in the insurance and financial services industry. As I mentioned, employee benefits, that's my background, so it's really near and dear to my heart. And I wanted to know if you could just share a little bit about what you do on the day-to-day basis in the employee benefits world as a producer.
Yeah, so I work for Scott Insurance. We're a privately held firm. I have headquarters in Lynchburg. I sit in the Richmond office. We have about 9 offices throughout the Mid-Atlantic. And we have two sides of the house. So we have a PNC and we have a benefit side of the house. And I'm on the benefit side, employee benefit side of the house. And so on a day-to-day basis, I'm a producer. That means I am in charge of bringing in new business and consulting that new business, and then also leading a team of about 5 people. So yes, and you're exactly right. It is a very busy time of year and I work in the mid-market space, so I should define that as well. So I mostly work with private organizations in the mid-market space, defining that, I think, in terms of employee count always, but that's about 100 employees to 1,000 employees is really sort of our sweet spot, and that's pretty broad, but about 70% of businesses in that mid-market or middle market space renew either 12/1 or 1/1. So we have a tremendous amount of volume in a very small time period. And so we are, my team and myself are consistently working to renew clients and serve clients well during this really busy time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I want to get into, your background, from because manufacturing is actually where you started your professional career. Well, actually, we'll go further back than that because you had the tomato farm. Was it tomato
Oh,
farm?
tomato stand. Yeah.
Tomato stand. Okay, we're gonna talk about tomato stand. All right, we're gonna talk about tomato stand.
Yeah.
But you're working with businesses, in that capacity too, a lot now in that manufacturing space. What do you find has been what do you find has been the benefit or the appeal of being in the group benefit space, and kind of what drew you towards that?
Yeah, so as you said, like my background, so I cut my teeth out of college. I worked for a manufacturer in South Carolina. They were a textile manufacturer, and I was an industrial engineer. And then I moved over to cost accounting, and my education is also in finance. And so I've had that financial foundation that I found was really easy to translate into employee benefits. And I would say what attracted me, I never thought like, man, I want to sell employee benefits. I want to be a producer. That was never a thought of mine. Knew I wanted to get into sales eventually. I'm driven in that way. I like a process. I'm very competitive. So it just fit my personality, but never did I think insurance sales. No one really thinks of insurance as a really sexy industry to be in. When you're manufacturing, you make stuff.
I don't see why not. I
I
mean,
know, right? Well, we're going to talk about how incredibly, lucrative and sexy it can be, right? But
listen,
yeah, so manufacturing, and then life takes you in so many different turns, and so started out there, and then eventually ended up working for we moved to Richmond, so not from Richmond originally. I've been here about 9 years now.
okay.
For people who are from Richmond, they're like, you just got here yesterday.
Yeah,
Very,
well, it only takes like 3 years, and then
yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Richmond is a little bit of a tough nut to crack, but we've done so successfully. But so moved up here, and really was looking to dive in or do something different in my career. And I had a friend who worked for an insurance agency, a small shop, and they said, "Hey, there's this thing called the Affordable Care Act." And as a result of that, we have to file 1094, 1095 firms. Hey, you're in accounting, you could do this, right? And I naively said, yeah, sure, I can do that. I could spell insurance, but that was about it. I
Yeah.
knew what the deductible was from through my everyday life, but didn't know much else than that. And so that first year, I got to know, the health insurance very intimately, and I filed about 3,500 1094 1095s, and so that's kind of my first introduction to it. But I would say to you that when I was in that middle time trying to build a career, one thing that I knew I needed to do was build a niche, right? I think that you can make more money, you're more marketable if you have a niche. And that just sort of, I started to build on that, and that came very easily, but I wouldn't say it was something that was planned. It was kind of accidental. But after I got a taste of it, then it was very intentional.
Absolutely. And we're going to come back to that. I want to take a moment and just kind of rewind. So we're going to go all the way back to Kentucky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kentucky. All right.
Yes.
So take me back, 9-year-old, 10-year-old. It wasn't Cassie O'Brien at this
No,
time.
with Kassi Reynolds. Yeah. No, no.
Cassie Reynolds. Okay, 9-year-old, 10-year-old Cassie Reynolds. What were you dreaming about being when you grew up?
I don't know that I ever dreamt about being any one thing. All I knew is I always had a hustle, even since a very young age. And so to talk about the tomato stand, my dad
Yeah.
had a garden. So I did grow up in Kentucky in the Bluegrass State, in Lexington. My folks are still there, and my dad had you- we had some, not a lot of land, but he had a small little garden. And at the end of the year, the tomatoes, he had a ton of tomatoes, and I remember the tomato cages he had, and they would all fall and they'd be on the ground. And before he could till, so after, when you're in the fall, you till up everything, right, to get it ready for the winter and then the spring to replant. And he told me, he's like, hey, go out there and pick up all these tomatoes. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. But I was like, all right, well, I'll pick up these tomatoes. And then I made a deal with my grandfather. I told him, I was like, if you can come get me, I'm going to get these tomatoes that have fallen, and some weren't ripe and some were on the ground and some were spoiled, but I had to go through them. And I said, and I want to put a tomato stand in your front yard. They were on a pretty busy street. And he was like, Kassi, nobody's going to buy those tomatoes. Those are like old tomatoes, right? It's like past season. It was in like September or something. I can't remember.
Okay.
Past the peak, right? But I was like, no, I mean, I think some people will. And so, I, number one, took a chore that I had to do and figured out and found a way to make money on it.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a bust. I did have some people that would come and buy some tomatoes from me. And I actually had a farmer who came. He had a farm down the road, and he came and bought me out to feed to his pigs. So there you go, right?
Yeah. Turning a profit early.
Right. And so somebody's waste, and I made a profit on it. And but that was just always me. Like I owned a small business in my 20s, and so early 30s. And so just always out there looking for a hustle. And I say that in a positive way. Like I'm always very driven in that way and very entrepreneurial.
Absolutely. It takes a certain kind of work ethic, to operate in this space, right? So, even though I promote, hey, you should get a license, and I feel that everyone should at least explore, opportunities in this industry, it does take a certain temperament, right? It's like you have to have that intrinsic motivation, like that internal desire to really make it happen. So let's talk about your journey as you were growing up. So you ended up going to school for accounting. What did the entrepreneur, did that happen in high school? Like what influenced your decision in that direction?
I would say that sort of it was always there. So my parents didn't graduate from college.
Okay.
And so they were very, very driven to get me to go to college. And then once I got to college, they were also very opinionated on what I should major in. And, they were looking at I'm spending this money, they're spending this money. And so there better be a return on investment. So that was always very top of mind for me. And I wasn't there to just play around. And in fact, I was making sacrifices. My family was making sacrifices for me to be there. So even from that moment, I knew I needed to major in something where I could get a job and I could be gainfully employed when I graduated. And so that was really my dad's doing. But if I look back on it, my grandfather, so he was, born in the Depression, served in World War II. When he came back, he could make something out of nothing. And I think that generation just in general can do that.
Yeah.
But he was very entrepreneurial, and I saw what he was able to build. And he did not come from a family of means. His family, actually had like a dirt floor. Like so definitely like seeing what he was able to create and seeing his work ethic along with my dad and mom's work ethic, that's just always been instilled in me. And I think you're right. Like this is a great industry, but people will run you over or run you by. And so you have to have the energy and the stamina to keep up with that.
That's right. And it can toughen you up if you're the right kind of person. I tell people, because most people I meet don't know, unless they knew me before I got into the industry, that my background was in the entertainment industry. And I toured as an artist for many years. And I released music independently, and I had a label, and I had a production company and publishing company, still have some of those things. But that experience, the experiences that I had 20 years of my life really gave me a thick skin, and it allowed me to not only take a lot of risks, but it allowed me to be able to develop a lot of resilience. And I think those are the traits that are important to continue to move forward and succeed. So, just looking at, your journey, going, going to school, being the first in your family to get that done, then, going into entrepreneurship, starting a business, making career pivots and then moving to a new area, you're going into a whole new career path, and then being able to carve out a lane and become successful in that. I mean, these are really unique and phenomenal accomplishments to have. So I want to stay on that, because I think it's important for people to know like what that looks like and what it feels like. So you're coming out of school, you've gotten your degree at this point. What's the next move for you? What are you thinking about? Where are you headed?
So I went to work for a manufacturer, and they had a great training program, and I made less money than some other offers that I had, but I knew that I needed some professional development, right? I needed, just I was young and I was inexperienced, and so I took a job where I could get experience, but they also had this amazing leadership program that I was put in. And as part of that, I went to Dale Carnegie. I was a graduate of Dale Carnegie, which I'm a huge proponent of Dale Carnegie. I also was put through Six Sigma training, which I'm a huge fan of that, because even today, like, I'm very process oriented. And I think that can help in a sales role as well. And so I think my intentionality was just, making the next right decision. And it was the right decision at the right time. Like, looking back, I've made decisions that, done some, things from a career wise that I think maybe were a waste of time, or maybe didn't contribute to success, but it was what I thought was the next right decision. And I think it's also expanding your stack, right? Your knowledge stack. So you come out of college, or you're in a career, and I'm always consistently looking for continual improvement, and how can I develop my knowledge stack? And so I'm always looking to learn and always looking to develop that, whether it's public speaking, whether it's, I took an improv class one year, because I really found myself stumbling over my words and really everything was getting caught up here, and it was head trash. And when I was cold calling, I couldn't get stuff out. And I was like, man, what can I do to really improve that, to think on my feet? And I was like, wow, an improv class is really going to
really good idea, actually.
And it's going to help you with objections. Like, you to take something in improv, you catch it, and then you got to throw it back. And so just looking to do things outside of the norm, and how can I improve and better myself, I would say.
Listen, you said a few things there, and I don't want that to be missed, because it was very important information. Drop some gems, in that moment. Okay, let's go back to starting your career, going with the company where it wasn't the highest offer that you got, but you knew that the development and learning opportunities were going to prepare you for the future. How valuable is that mindset to have? Because today, you know the age we live in. I mean, I don't want
it now. We want it now, and we want it all.
But how important was that development, in your career?
I mean, that was huge, because it was foundational. It laid the foundation.
Yeah.
And I think looking at your career as a marathon, not just a race, right? Like, that's what you have to do, and being really smart about what you say yes to. You really have to be judicious about that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the focus on personal and professional development, you mentioned Dale Carnegie. So all the things that you're saying, for those who are listening, I hope you're taking some notes, or like really thinking about ways that you can find your own development opportunities. That improv one, that I've never heard that before as a means to professional development, but that is such a great idea. That is so powerful.
I mean, I've always thought I'm funny, so it kind of came naturally. I'm actually not that funny, but no, it was a great, again, like, just stepping outside of, you have a problem. My problem was not so great at cold calling, had to do it to succeed. And so how can I get around that? What can I do? How can I build myself differently? And I still do that. Like, I'm reading a book right now about reframing different situations in your life. So again, I'm always looking, how can I improve at this time in my life, and just be a better version of myself next year than I am this year? And I think when you do that, you're going to find the right path, whatever that may be. And you're going to make some wrong turns, but you're going to make some right turns along the way.
That's right. That's right. And let's talk about the turns. So let's talk about turns. So we're working in manufacturing.
Yep.
Now, how long did you stay in that space? And I want to hear about the entrepreneurship um, aspects of this as well.
Yeah. So I worked in manufacturing for about 6 years.
Okay.
And I went back and I got my MBA.
Okay.
So I was working and getting my MBA at the same time. And then I got married, and then I went into sort of a sales position for a home builder in Florida. My husband and I had transferred at the time for his job, and was in a marketing position, and really figured out I don't like marketing. I mean, I'm a natural marketer, but I don't like the project work of marketing. And that was sort of the career path to be VP, was a marketing, you handled projects, and that I'm creative, but I didn't like that aspect of it. And plus I move at a very high pace, and
Yeah.
you can have a project that takes several years, and you don't see the immediate impact sometimes until years later. And so I was doing that, and then we had children, and I think it's really important to bring that up because as you and I have talked, I'm a huge proponent of women in the insurance industry, and specifically female producers, because
Yeah.
I think it can afford them with flexibility. I think that it can afford them a great lifestyle for their family, and open up so many doors. And so I had two children, and my children are 14 months apart, so I had them pretty quickly. And I
Wow.
had to really, yeah, I had to kind of step back in my career to take care of the little ones that I had, and I had no family around. So that's when I sort of got creative and developed my own business, so I could work on my own time, so I could still be with my children, but also earn some money for our family. And so that's when I started. It was a children's clothing business. I designed clothing, and then I was sewing the clothing, that eventually outsourced that and sold to individual boutiques in Jacksonville, Florida. So
That's
that
all.
was fun, right? And it was,
Yeah.
again, enabled me to provide for my children, but also be with them, for doctor's appointments and, for those sorts of things. And I have two girls. So, but then, we were transferred to Virginia, and I wanted to, again, like, had to shut that business down and wanted to do something else. And so the opportunity to be a producer came about, and I was very intentional in pursuing that. I saw what producers were making, right? Or I could imagine what they were making. And one thing that I will say that a right move that I made in my career was, a lot of times you'll get put into a position where, okay, you're an account manager, and then you move up to an account executive, and then you can become a producer, right? And that takes a long time. Not a lot. I don't know. I mean, maybe it takes 5 years, 6 years, but that's sort of a common trajectory,
The
right?
talent pipeline usually
Yeah.
runs that
Yeah.
course, right?
And so I asked the producers, in my office, like, hey, what did you do before this? And they were mostly male, right? There was one female. And they told me what they did before. And none of them were account managers, by the way. They all went from sales into production, even though they had no insurance background. And so I've told leadership at that organization that I wanted to get into sales and wanted to get to producing. And they said, all right, well, this is the trajectory. And I just thought, like, why does that have to be? And I see a lot of women doing that and thinking, all right, I'm going to put my time in here, and then move here, and then move to production. What I can tell you is that I was in a service role for about a year, but I quickly learned that I didn't need to be in a service role. I could learn what I need to learn from vendors, from other producers. And so I skipped that step, and I'm so glad I did, because my book of business would not be where it is today if I would have spent time, in a service role. And service is for some people. That was not for me, and that's not what I wanted out of my career.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me and correct me if I don't have all of this info, but it seems like when men are recruited into produce, it seems like most times men are recruited into production roles, but women are applying to production roles. Is that something that you've seen
Yeah.
in your career?
I will tell you, and you can't paint a broad brush, right? I want to be very careful not to do
Yeah.
that. But I think two things. I think salespeople are hard to find. Salespeople who can actually sell and are good at it and enjoy it as well, right? I think very male, female is very, I think that's probably about 20%, right? Can do that job and enjoy it and be successful at it. So that's one thing. I think sales are just hard to find. Hunters are hard to find.
Yeah.
Producers are hard to find. But then within that, I absolutely see, men are hired for their potential. Women are hired based on what they've done. And if you don't have a track record, you have to be really assertive and aggressive and creative in how you present to the leadership team that's hiring you on how you can get the job done just the same as your male counterpart can get the job done. And
Yeah.
I've seen that time and time again. And unfortunately, I work for a company who's very open to not, you know, doing it that way. And they're open. It's just, I'm telling you, it's hard to find female producers. It's very hard to find them. So that's part of the reason I'm on here, to sort of explain my background and to hopefully recruit some other
Yeah, say,
females.
hey, female producers. Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what it looks like. Let's talk about what it looks like on a day-to-day basis. I mean, earlier we mentioned that, hey, it's a busy time, it's open enrollment. What
Yeah.
what do you, when you're out, when you said hunting, what is a day in the life of a producer, or a Cassie O'Brien? Let's say you're starting from scratch. Matter of fact, let's go back to your first year as a producer.
Yeah. Yeah. That is, and again, I'm a mom, right? And so one of the things that I do enjoy about production is you can kind of set your own schedule. But
Yep.
at the end of the day, you're eating what you kill, so to speak, right? And so you have to be really dedicated, and you have a lot of volume in the beginning. And by a lot of volume, I mean you need to meet a lot of people. You need to make a lot of calls. And so in the beginning, that was like dropping my kids off at school at 8 o'clock, being in the office by 8:15, 8:20, and then hitting calls, returning emails, follow-up emails, then having a lunch with someone, maybe going to a network event that night. And it is jam-packed with activity. And I think you said in the beginning, like, you have to have the stamina and have the energy for that.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, even from the beginning to now, it hasn't really slowed down. I'm still like, my days are packed. So
Yeah.
it's just maybe a different kind of packed than it was in the very beginning.
Yeah, yeah. You still are in control of your time, but the time has to be spent efficiently.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you to speak to that, just from a standpoint of, even though you have the time flexibility to, you know, be there with family, when those times are necessary, take, your own time for, just for some self-care, sometimes, because it can be a stressful position to be in. How important is it to be efficient with the business of your time, in that role as well?
Yeah. I mean, I would say you have to be laser focused.
Yeah.
People are nice. People want to help you out, I've learned. And I would get invited to a lot of networking meetings, or a lot of breakfasts, a lot of lunches. And I had to just be really intentional about, all right, are you in the middle market space? Who can you introduce me to? Who can I introduce you to? And in the beginning, I learned very quickly what networking groups were not true middle market business to business, even though
Mhm.
I super liked those people, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't helping me. And so the way I view it is, any time spent outside of my home or away from my children, so I better be making money, right?
That's
And
right.
so I'm like, I want to maximize my earning potential when I'm away from my children, right? And so that is what I learned, is to just really be upfront with people, and just in a really nice way of like, who are your clients? Who are you calling on? Does that align with me? And if it doesn't align with me, so great to meet you. Let me know if I can help you on any time, but I'm not wasting time there, because I got to move on, right?
Yeah.
To someone who I can help and someone who can help me.
That's
Um,
right.
so it's really defining that, and where I see a lot of people, not just women, get hung up on, is they will just chit chat away and never get to it. And it's finding that balance of relating to somebody, right? Sitting across from somebody, and I'm interested in you. I want to hear from you, but also being able to pivot that conversation of, okay, now how can we help each other? You
That's
know,
right.
how can I help you? How can you help me? And so you do have to be really resolute about that. Especially anybody I think who has kids or other family members, you know, that they're taken care of.
Yeah, yeah. It really is. It really is a creative gig, when you think about it. So it really it plays well to your background and your other experiences. If there was an ideal candidate, let's say if someone was hearing this conversation and like, that sounds interesting. What are some of the qualifications? We talked about personality, types. What type of background professionally do you think that person needs to have, to
Yeah.
enter the space?
I think in employee benefits, a financial background or any insurance, I think a financial background is just helps you so much, like incredible amounts, because what we're doing is we're dealing with very large budget items, and we're helping businesses manage those um, budget line items, right? And so anytime you can have that conversation and feel comfortable from a finance perspective, I think is really beneficial. I would say the other thing in sales, and I would consider myself a consultative salesperson. Like, I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to figure out what your needs are and then teach you a little something along the way, add value. I think anyone who likes to teach, like your last guest, Kathy, who was on, she had a
Yeah.
the teacher, right? I
Yep.
think, a lot of what we're doing is I'm teaching employers how to manage this healthcare expense and the right financial vehicle to be in to finance their health plan expense. So I think
Absolutely.
that's another quality. And from a technical standpoint, be it right or wrong, I'm one of those people that's like, it's not that hard. And I've always had that attitude, right? Like, I can learn how to do this. If I want to put in the time, I can learn how to do it. So I
That's
think
right.
anybody can learn how to do it. Those are backgrounds that I think could help you. But really, Rod, it's your personality. It is your drive, because again, it is a very tough business. It takes a lot of grit. And if you're not competitive, if you don't enjoy that, then you're not going to have fulfillment on a day-to-day basis. And so then I think there's other places in the insurance industry that you should look, right? Maybe not a production role, maybe an account executive role, maybe an account manager role.
Yeah.
But for a production role, you have to have that competitiveness and that energy, I think, or you're going to burn out and
That's
you're not
right.
going to be able to keep pace.
Yeah. I think, I want you to really expound on, women's place, not only in the employee benefits world, but also in insurance as a whole. And, just some of the things that you found in your own research and career journey.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always felt that, in this business, finding individuals who even knew it existed was always the key. Like, teachers definitely, if you have an education background, like, this is probably a great space, for you to explore. As you mentioned, an accounting background. If you're an accountant with the personality, you have finance background, these are great. This is a great space for you to enter. I myself didn't even know that employee benefits consultants existed until I was in my early 30s. So
Same.
what looking at talent pipeline development, particularly from a woman's lens, what are some of the things that you found throughout your journey in your research that you found have been important, just to share and just to make people aware of about this space?
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. Like, never did I think, oh, I'm going to sell insurance for a living, right? I mean, I thought of insurance as like my car insurance. I go down and pay for my car insurance or whatever. But never did I think, you could really, provide consultative services to mid-market business and to CEOs, to CFOs, to HR professionals.
Yeah.
But you can, and I think it's, we're all, when we're in high school or we're doing those career tests, mine always came back, you should be a nurse or you should be a teacher, and I think it's because I had a lot of energy, wanted to help people, but, we just don't sometimes translate that into other business positions, right? We just, keep those in the silo or the lane that they're in. So I think what you're doing, number one, is getting the word out in our communities, me getting the word out amongst women. I think that's hugely important. And I think, again, back to my first point, to see somebody who looks like you excelling, that means a whole lot. And I think
Yeah.
Simone Biles kind of said it, like, she wants to be there. She wants other little girls to see, like, look what I did. You look
Yeah.
like me. You can do this too. And I don't think that should be minimized, because I've even encountered it. I look up to women in the insurance industry and I'm like, oh, if they did it, I can do it.
That's right.
So I don't think that should be discounted. But to your ask of just, and I have some statistics I wrote down for this. I knew them and I re-looked them up before this. But according to the Insurance Business Magazine, 60% of license holders are women, right? So overwhelmingly female, right? But guess how many, and I'll just throw it out there, how many out of that are producers? What percentage are producers? Women are producers?
You don't see many.
No,
You,
I mean, what would your guess? Just throw out
I
a
mean,
number.
my guess would be and I spent a lot of time calling brokers, for a while, but I would say maybe 10%.
Yeah, it differs by different areas of the country, right? But it's about 30%.
Oh, it's 30% women.
30% women, and that's a national
Okay.
statistic, right?
Producers.
Producers, yes, right.
Okay. Okay.
30% of producers are female. But I would argue here, in the mid-Atlantic, what I've encountered is kind of what you've encountered. I would have
Yeah.
guessed, 10 to
Well, I
15%.
guess if we're in LA, if we're in like California or
Right.
New York,
Or Portland, Oregon, there's a huge, like, yeah.
yeah,
Just,
right.
yeah, just different. But to your point, 60%, what that means to me though, is there's a huge gap. There's a huge income gap there. And so why can these women who have licenses, are equipped and have knowledge, can we put them in leadership roles? Can we put them in production roles? There's a huge gap to be filled there. And I think that they can, fill it.
I don't think they know. I don't think they know the opportunity exists.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part. That's a big part of it because I didn't know. When I came in the industry, I thought there was the well, I thought there was one lane before I joined the industry. When I joined the industry on the worksite side, I was like, oh, you can do it that way. And I thought that was the other way. And I
Yeah.
didn't know that there were other ways until I started branching out on my own. So I think it's an awareness thing. What can companies do to be more proactive with engaging, not only young talent but communities, with the opportunities that are present? What do you think?
I mean, I am a huge proponent of women, like we talked about, being in production roles, being in leadership roles. And then I'm a huge advocate for women of color. And I think me coming on and doing things with you, getting out and, letting people know what exists and talking about it. And then for me, it's hiring those women in. So again, they can tell their friends and their friends can see what they're doing and how well they're doing. And so it's sort of a domino effect, but it needs to, it's stepping out and doing things like this and talking about it and creating awareness, I think
Absolutely.
is the biggest thing you could do. And then, getting those kids early on, like when they're in college. And I haven't figured that part out yet, but I mean, that's huge right there. Because there are you can go anywhere, New York, Boston, like there are so many places you can go and so many great companies you can work for, publicly traded, privately traded, on the carrier side, on the broker side. I mean, it's really limitless.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of space. We're gonna talk about that college piece, offline when we finish this
Yeah.
interview. Yeah, I got some thoughts around that. Because that's the place. I think that's the place where people are looking for where they're going to go, what they're going to do with their future. And if someone had come to the campus of, I started at Virginia State, then I was at Virginia State and VCU. When I was at VCU, I didn't even know they had a risk management department
Yeah.
over there. Maybe had someone said something to me about it. I don't know. Maybe I would have ended up there early, but I never saw anyone at Virginia State from, a brokerage to say, hey, there's an opportunity here. So I think that's a part of it. Um, I want to ask you, because you've been you've been in this space 10 almost 10 years now.
8 years. Yeah.
8 years. So you mentioned, hey, I'm still hunting. I got my groups, my schedule's packed. I'm still hunting each year. Obviously, you continue to build it bigger and bigger. But what's keeping you motivated now? Like, what keeps you motivated and keep going on day to day?
Yeah. So actually, you like that question is so timely. What keeps me at first it was like feeding my family kept me motivated. And so now that I'm doing that, well, um, after you kind of get outside of that, then you start looking of truly like, why am I doing this? And for me, that is promoting my team. That is taking, and I have an all female team, not by intent, it just happens to be that way.
Yeah,
But taking these women in who are from outside of the industry and giving them the flexibility to take care of their children, to create wonderful lives for themselves, and to really be a leader for those women. And again, I've done it, you can do it. That is hugely motivational. And in fact, I got a note from one of the women that works with me, and was just like, you're an inspiring leader. And I never like set out to do that, but I have such a heart for elevating people and being I guess a coach to people at this point. So that's what motivates me now. And I still like making money, but that's
right, right. Speaking of money,
yeah,
tell me, okay, and this is, speak freely. I want to talk about life before the license,
yeah.
life after the license. Give me something that you've been able to do since getting into this industry, because people don't know how, you mentioned it earlier, how lucrative it can be. What are some of
Yeah.
the opportunities or things this industry has allowed you to do?
So I remember, uh, before, and I had a fine job too. So don't get me wrong, I had a fine job. But I love jewelry, I love fashion, and I would see people wearing Louis Vuittons, and like that's what I wanted, right? A Louis Vuitton, and that was like my pinnacle. Like I will have made it when I could go out and purchase a Louis Vuitton. And so when I guess probably 2 or 3 years ago, when you allocate your paycheck so many places, right? Kids got to get this, people have lessons, etc. Like once that's allocated, and then at that time I had money left over, like some room, right, where I could go out and buy a Louis Vuitton, a very
Something
extravagant,
new. I'm gonna do
yeah,
something for me. That's
a
right.
very extravagant gift, right? Like there's no reason to need it. My life would be fine without it, but it was something that I wanted. Um, and so to me, and in fact, I did not buy a Louis Vuitton. I did something better. I took the money that I was going to buy a Louis Vuitton purse with, and I invested it in LVT stock.
Ah, okay.
And now I can
That's
buy,
because you're working in insurance.
yeah, now I can buy 3 Louis Vuittons if I want,
That's,
So
right. That's what happens when you start working in insurance. You start thinking of it differently.
yeah. But so I use that, and I use that particular example because, before I would have never been able to even think about buying a luxury good like that, right? And now, I could, right? And so, and I think that will resonate too with talk about women and call, like women will know what I'm talking about when I say
Right.
that.
Oh
um,
yeah.
so yeah, I mean, life is not completely different, but there's room to breathe and there's room for those things. And to be able to spend that on family and help friends, like that's an amazing thing. And that I would not have been able to do if I would have continued in my previous career.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So at this stage, 8 years, almost a decade in, you're leading a team, you're inspiring women, to pursue their goals and dreams, and really kind of following your footsteps. And I commend you on that, Kassi. I mean, just an outstanding job. I mean, from the time that we've met, everyone who knows you and has spoken about you, always speaks very highly of you and your professionalism and your knowledge and everything that you do and contribute to this space. So one, thank you for that. Thank you for being just a positive influence and person in this business. But I like to know, like, we talk about what keeps you motivated. but what's the dream now? Like what's the big picture when it's all said and done? Where's Kassi O'Brien at?
Oh my gosh. Well, right now it's to continue to grow my book of business.
Mhm.
It's to continue to grow the women that work with me and to help them meet their goals and dreams. And then, I think eventually, and I don't know even what capacity, I haven't really thought too hard about it. It is being in a position to promote and hire and really direct a business in the way that I think you know to be a little bit more diverse, to let some others in. And um I think that I'm a big proponent of, we need to look like the clients we're serving, right? We need to look like our communities. And before we got on this call, you read off a stat that when businesses look at gender diversity, ethnicity, that it not only is good for our community, but it also, those businesses are more profitable than those who don't.
Yeah.
And so, being in a position where I can play a part in that, I don't know what that will look like. I don't know what that will be. And then being able to help my children. So, right now, if you ask them what they want to do, this is the last thing they want to do. They say,
Right.
Mom, I don't want to do anything with business. I don't want to have to talk on the phone. You talk on the phone way too much, Mom.
Right.
But being able to give them a sample and a pathway that if they want this, they can also have financial independence. They can help others. They can create a wonderful life for themselves. Like, that's important too.
Love it. They say that now, but when they get older, they're gonna say, you know what? I think
She maybe knew something. I don't know.
that's right. She might have been onto something here. You never know where it's gonna go.
That's right.
Um, hey, look, Kassi, I appreciate you taking this time once again, to come on, share, and just impart, your knowledge to the audience here. Before we leave, someone who is considering getting into the space, looking at opportunities, maybe they're on the fence about it, they're unsure, they're a little bit nervous, they're uncertain. What kind of advice or guidance would you have for that person?
I would say connect with people like myself. I would say look for people who are doing what you think you might want to do, and maybe you will want to do that, or maybe you'll have a conversation and decide you don't want to. I think like I said in the beginning, most people are nice and want to help you, right? And so if a young woman or young man or whomever came to me and said, all right, would you have lunch with me, can you tell me about this? I think I would love to do that, and I would love to help someone out in that regard, and could really like point them in the direction of maybe some classes they need to take, or even make connections for them. Maybe they're graduated, maybe they're, early on in their career. I think, looking at what you want to do, where you want to be, and connecting with people. It is all about relationships, in this business, as in with anything. And so making those connections and just ask for what you want. So many people don't ask for what they want. And so do that and do it proudly and be gracious about it. And I think, a lot of times you're going to get some no's, but you're going to get some yeses.
Yes, ask for what you want. Whoa, it's so simple, yeah,
Yeah.
profound.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kassi, if someone wants to get in contact with you,
Yeah.
they want to reach out and ask you about opportunities to work with you, learn with you, connect with you. How do our listeners and how do the people who might be viewing this later
Yeah.
on, how do they reach you?
Yep. So I'm on LinkedIn, Kassi O'Brien on LinkedIn. Also, certainly email me, O'Brien at Scott, SCOTTINS, and would be happy to help anyone or share anything that I can.
Awesome, awesome. And we'll have all the contact information. If you're watching the video, you'll see the contact information below. If you're listening on a streaming platform, you'll see her contact information in the description as well. Want to say thank you once again to the employee benefits champion, Ms. Kassi O'Brien, for coming on and sharing her journey and her story and expertise. And maybe you heard something that made you say to yourself, if you are contemplating a new career, maybe you're living in another state and you're about to move to Virginia or some area that's in the surrounding counties or geography, and you say, hey, this sounds like a career path and maybe you should get a license. Until the next time, take care. Peace.